Hello. Welcome. I just got done with doing church in my basement. This is during the COVID-19 time in our lives when we're doing online service, and I couldn't help myself. I kept thinking about Kurt Vonnegut Jr. And so I'm going to be reading a passage from his last book, the last passage of that book, and then how it relates to the poem Mont Blanc by Percy Blythe Shelley. And so this is found in Timequake, Kurt Vonnegut Jr., where he ends the story of Kilgore Trout, which, if ever there was a fictional character that I would love to meet someday, it would be Kilgore Trout, who was a science fiction writer, time traveler, hero of many of his books. And Kilgore Trout, in Timequake, the last book written by the late, great Kurt Vonnegut Jr., Timequake is about the universe stopping and struggling with a crisis of confidence, wondering if it should continue. And Kilgore Trout talks the universe into continuing, surviving, living. And at the very end, he's gathered by all of his friends and his family, and this is the last portion, the last part of Kilgore Trout's story. And Kilgore Trout said at the clambake, with Laurel and Hardy in a rowboat only 50 yards offshore, that young people liked movies with a lot of shooting because they showed that dying didn't hurt at all, that people with guns could be thought of as freelance anesthesiasts. He was so happy. He was so popular. He was all dolled up in the tuxedo and boiled shirt and crimson cummerbund and bow tie that had belonged to Zoltan Pepper. I stood beside him, Kilgore, in his suite in order to tie the tie for him, just as my big brother had done for me before I myself could tie a bow tie. There on the beach, whatever Trout said produced laughter and applause. He couldn't believe it. He said the pyramids and Stonehenge were built in a time of very feeble gravity, when boulders could be tossed around like sofa pillows, and people loved it. They begged for more. He gave them the line from Kiss Me Again. There is no way a beautiful woman can live up to what she looks like for any appreciable length of time. Ting-a-ling! People told him he was as witty as Oscar Wilde. Understand, the biggest audience this man had had before the clambake was an artillery battery, when he was a forward spotter in Europe during World War II. Ting-a-ling! If this isn't nice, what is? He exclaimed to us all. I called back to him for the rear of the crowd. You've been sick, Mr. Trout, but now you're well again, and there's work to do. My lecture agent, Janet Cosby, was there. At 10 o'clock, the old, long out-of-print science fiction writer announced it was his bedtime. There was one last thing he wanted to say to us, to his family. Like a magician seeking a volunteer from the audience, he asked someone to stand beside him and do what he said. I held up my hand. Me, please, me, I said. The crowd fell quiet as I took my place to his right. The universe has expanded so enormously, he said. With the exception of the minor glitch it put us through. That light is no longer fast enough to make any trips worth taking in even the most unreasonable lengths of time. Once the fastest thing possible, they say, light now belongs in the graveyard of history, like the Pony Express. I now ask this human being, brave enough to stand next to me, to pick two twinkling points of obsolete light in the sky above us. It doesn't matter what they are, except that they must twinkle. If they don't twinkle, they're either planets or satellites. Tonight, we are not interested in planets or satellites. I picked 2 points of light, maybe 10 feet apart. One was Polaris. I have no idea what the other one was. For all I knew, it was puke. Trout's star, the size of a BB. "Do they twinkle?" he said. "Yes, they do." "Promise?" "Cross my heart." "Excellent. Ting-a-ling," he said. "Now then, whatever heavenly bodies those 2 glints represent, it is certain that the universe has become so rarefied that for light to go from one to other take thousands and millions of years. Ting-a-ling? But I now ask you to look precisely at one, and then precisely at the other." "Okay," I said. "I did it." "It took you a second, do you think?" he said. "No more," I said. "Even if you'd taken an hour," he said, "something would have passed between where those 2 heavenly bodies used to be, at, conservatively speaking, 1,000,000 times the speed of light." "What was it?" I said. "Your awareness," he said. "That is a new quality in the universe, which exists only because there are human beings. Physicists must from now on, when pondering the secret of the cosmos, factor in not only energy and matter and time, but something very new and beautiful, which is human awareness." Trout paused, ensuring that the ball of his left thumb from his upper dental plate would not slip, when he said his last words to us at the enchanted evening. All was well with his teeth. This was his finale. "I have thought of a better word than awareness," he said. "Let us call it soul." He paused. "Ting-a-ling?" he said. And the idea that awareness is the magic of creation is what Percy Blythe Shelley tried to capture in the last portion of his poem Mont Blanc. He writes, "Mont Blanc yet gleams on high, the powers is there, the still and solemn power of many sights and many sounds, much of life and death, in the calm darkness of the moonless nights, the lone glare of day, the snows descend upon the mountains. None beholds them there, nor when the flanks burn in the sinking sun, or the starbeams dart through them. Winds contend silent there, and heap the snow with breath rapid and strong, but silently. Its home, the voiceless lighting, in these solitudes keeps innocently, and like vapor broods over the snow. The secret strength of these things, which governs thought, and to the infinite dome of heaven is as a law, inhabit thee. And what wert thou, and earth, and stars, and seas, if to the human mind's imaginings silence and solitude were vacancy?" The Westminster Catechism says that the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And the Catechism and the poem from Shelley and Kilgore Trout's speech all say the same thing. Smarten up. Wake up. Pay attention. Take in and notice the beauty of all creation. This is the job we are to do, amongst many jobs. It isn't solitary and alone, but our job is to notice things and say, wow. Happy Sunday.